let me know.
Okay, I believe we are connecting. Let me see if we're streaming. Anybody has Facebook up and sees it? We are streaming, so we are good to go.
All right, so without further ado, go ahead and bring the April 15th meeting of the Delaware City Finance Committee to order. Would you please read the roll, please?
Vice Mayor Schaefer.
Here.
Vice Chairman Jones.
Here.
Here. Next thing, approval of the motion summary of our last meeting on February 11th. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the motion summary. Second.
All right, roll, please.
Vice Mayor Schaefer.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Jones.
Yes.
Chairman Hellinger.
Yes. Elaine, do we have any public comment at this point?
Not at this point, no. And I did not receive any emails.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's go ahead then move down to item 4, the review of the March financial report.
That's going to be Justin. I'm going to share my screen real quick. So can everyone see the financial report?
Yes.
Great. So I'm going to start out on page 2. We did
a little bigger, Justin.
Yep, sure.
Yeah, great.
We did receive first half property tax settlement in March. Total collections were about $785,000, reflecting about a 2% increase. And then we did end March with about an almost 4% increase in income tax receipts, up to about $3.68 million. And then we did have the first quarter chargebacks to some of the enterprise funds for about $380,000. The expenditure section of this report, it just outlines what the operating transfers have been to some of the special revenue and capital funds for your review. Going on to page 3, just have a summary of the revenues and expenditures for the general fund. Again, total collections were about 23% of the estimated budget for revenue, slightly under the 25% target. And then on the spending side, total spending was about $5.89 million, reflecting about 22.3% of the budget. On the revenue side, we just didn't see any declines for the month of March. We're closely watching our daily collections. Through April 8th, the income tax receipts or collections are holding steady to the amounts from 2019. The other item that we're really watching is the fees, license, and permits, because that's such a large revenue source for us. One thing I did indicate to council earlier this month is with the Fed funds rate going to 0, I'm projecting a pretty significant decline in interest income for the general fund and some of the other enterprise funds. All the money for the city that's invested, it's placed into something called Star Ohio. It's a money market fund operated by the state. Eventually, the yield on that money market fund is going to go to 0. So I'm anticipating that to occur probably sometime in May as all those securities in the portfolio mature. Are there any questions on the general fund? If not,
Justin, real quickly, could you just explain, just go back to that first page and just explain the chargeback, how that works?
So a chargeback is basically a charge for kind of overhead for some of the enterprise funds. Just as an example, I'm just throwing out a number. Let's say for the finance department that processes purchase orders or processes payroll revenue entries for water and wastewater, maybe on a quarterly basis, we have a set percentage that we charge those enterprise funds for these administrative services. So this is very common amongst counties and municipalities throughout the state.
Great, thanks.
Sure. Starting on page 4, Fire EMS Income Tax Fund. Total charges for EMS runs collected were about $172,000 through the end of March. And then income tax receipts were also up by roughly 4%, equaling $2.57 million. And then on page 5, just have a breakdown again on revenue and expenditures through the end of March. On the spending side, we're not seeing any major variances compared to what the budget is. Same thing on the revenue side. Does anyone have any questions on this fund? Page 6, Stormwater Fund. What was interesting for the month of March, amongst all 4 of the enterprise funds, there was an increase for basically basic services such as water, sewer, stormwater, and refuse and recycling, but the increases were pretty marginal. So once we started to get the word out that customers wouldn't have their water service turned off for non-payment, coupled with the layoffs that started to occur in March, you did see an increase, but it was very minor across all enterprise funds. So if you look at stormwater, the increase was about $3,000 compared to March of 2019. And then going into the revenue summary, revenue and expense summary, no major items to report for the stormwater fund. There are no other questions going into the water fund. Meter charges or charges per CCF of water delivered were up about $19,000 from the same period of last year. On the capacity fee side for new construction, we did receive about $566,000, and that goes into the water capacity fee fund. And then here we have a summary of revenues and expenditures for the water fund, including the 3 kind of groupings of department costs for this operation. Again, no major items to report both on revenues and expenditures. Wastewater fund, total collections were also up by about $19,000 through the end of March. And then similar to water, there was about $538,000 in capacity fees collected and posted to the wastewater capacity fee fund. Again, schedule of revenues and expenditures just for the wastewater operating fund, no major items to report for March. Page 12 is the refuse fund. Year-to-date collections were about $909,000 and up also about 1.4%, 1.3%. So you can see it's pretty consistent across the board for the 4 main enterprise operations. And then the summary of revenues and expenditures, again, for refuse, no major items to report.
Justin, if you could just explain the action council took the other night regarding the credit and the $100,000 and where how that impacts and where that will be reflected in the next quarterly report.
Sure. So when these credits start to get applied, you're going to see that in the basically line items that reflect charges for services. So this $100,000 in the credit that was applied, it'll be applied across all 4 enterprise funds, but it's not going to post as an expense. It'll be reflected through charges for services because you're going to see a decline in revenue. Internally, what we've been talking about is we'll be tracking these credits. When we apply them to customers, we'll do them in a batch per day, and we'll have a running tally as to what's been released, what's available, and what the credits were applied across all 4 funds. We do have a draft of the application. We'll be looking at that at 4 o'clock today in a separate meeting. So we're hoping to get that application posted to the city's website once we have all the internal administrative kind of processes determined. And then, as I mentioned at the council meeting earlier this week, we'll include an insert with the May utility bill, notifying customers of this program, and then we'll work with Lee to get this posted on social media. if council members, I don't know if you've noticed on some of the mobile signs throughout the city on William Street today, there's a notice that the income tax filing date is moved to July 15th. We could use those signs to also post about this program as well. Are there any other questions on refuse? Okay. Pages 14, 15, and 16. These are the cash flow statements for each fund. I'm going to move through this one pretty quickly, but here, total cash amongst all funds were about $90.9 million. And going into the financial statement, you can see that dollar amount here reconciles to our bank and Star Ohio accounts. So all our funds and all our bank accounts are fully reconciled. What I have here is listed as the yield on Star Ohio, this money market. It's going down about 0.5% each day. Right now, it's kind of flat at about 0.93%. But again, as I mentioned, when there's securities within this money market, when those mature off, this yield will go eventually close to or equaling zero. And then last page, on page 18, we just have a summary of all the outstanding long-term debt. For the April report, I will have 2 additional schedules showing amounts billed for all 4 of the enterprise funds going back for the last 18 months, and then some charts showing consumption. That way, if anyone's interested, you can see how much we've billed for each of the utility systems per month versus what we've collected. So that will be included in the April financial statement.
Justin, on the debt service associated with the City Hall project that we've discussed, that was part of a larger borrowing. Where is that reflected?
This is up here in the 2019 general obligation debt. So it's right here within general fund and this municipal impact fee. So it's these 2 funds that are impacted by that. That borrowing was about $4 million last year.
And that included the City Hall. One piece of that was the City Hall security upgrades and renovations.
Right.
Okay.
Are there any other questions on the financial statements?
Hey, just real quickly on the Tom, on the utility bills, the bills that go out in May are for April, correct?
Yeah, so it's like real estate taxes. They're billed in the rears. So we'll capture all the meter data through the AMR system, load it in and reconcile it for later this month. And then that data is proofed, and then the bills are sent to the bill printer sometime a couple days before the end of the month.
Great, thank you.
Okay, that's nothing else on the March financials then?
No, not at this time.
All right, so then let's move on down to our review of the 2020 budget gauge.
Yeah, this is, I included this in the packet, and the council had received it previously. This is a tool that we used back in the 2008, 2009, and 2010 recession, and it proved very useful from the standpoint of providing kind of a graphic that captures, really the 5 different levels that we operate at, and obviously I don't know if anybody can share that gauge. I don't have have it in front of me, but when I'm looking at it, but it really starts with normal operations at the bottom and goes all the way to a red level, which is service level reductions. And thank you. We are currently in a budget restraint mode. The way that this crisis is unfolding is a lot different than what the city's had to deal with in the past. 2008 recession started in 07 and it really lasted through 10, 11, and 12, but the city was really impacted. The 2009 budget was impacted and the 2010 budget was impacted. This is happening much quicker. And right now it's premature to really project what the financial impact is going to be. I'm hoping it's not going to be significant, but we're going to prepare that it could be significant in terms of budget reductions. This gauge will continue to use this as a way to monitor our expenditures, review our revenues. We've already, our budget analyst, Alicia Balone, has reached out to all the directors. We're working with them on various ways of cutting back. We've already put a hiring freeze in place, except for any kind of essential employees. So that's in place at this point. So this again, we'll continue to use this as our way of communicating to city council, to directors, and to the public about where things stand. It will also help us develop what our strategy is going to be, kind of our mitigation strategy, in terms of what changes might have to be made to the budget. I included in the packet my budget message from the 2009 budget, which was written in the fall of 2008 when things were starting to the financial crisis was starting to evolve, kind of in those early stages. And that 2009 budget message forecasted a lot of changes that we needed to make and that we were making. If you had a chance to read that message, you'll see that the seeds of what we were dealing with back then was really in 2007, but we didn't start taking action until 2009. The action that City Council took in 2009 was to we put an appropriation ordinance in front of Council in October of 2009, which actually reduced the budget back about $1.7 million. So as we continue to monitor our revenues and the impacts from this downturn, this will be the strategy that we use there will help inform us as to what we're going to be doing in terms of having perhaps to get council to act on an ordinance later on in the year that would have budget cutbacks. It's premature, as I said, again, to know the extent of what those are going to be. But I think I can confidently say that we will be impacted. It's just too early in the in this crisis to know what that impact is going to be looking like. Obviously, second quarter is going to tell us a whole lot more. There is this is a federal emergency and it's a national emergency, so there are funds set aside by FEMA, by the federal government, by the state government to assist localities. We're tracking all of our expenses now that are related to the crisis to make sure that we have a good accounting of what this is costing us. And so at some point, hopefully there will be some sort of reimbursement back to local communities. So anyway, that's just a kind of an overview of the gauge, how we'll be using it. And that really just kind of rolls into the next item, which is just discussion of the strategy. So I'd be interested in just any feedback from finance committee members about where we are at this point.
So Tom, do you have, or can we get a timeline on decision points, I guess? So like, I don't know if that's a 30, 60, 90 timeline, day timeline, saying that, by this time next month, obviously we're looking at April's returns and what we may be able to start to factor in as, factors that may lead us to future decisions. And the same there at the 60 and 90 day when we complete the first half of the year and what have you.
Yeah, I think we can do that. I mean, that's really what we've been talking about internally is what that looks like, and I can let Justin elaborate. One of the things we're monitoring very closely is the state, the gas tax revenue. We know that there's a decline there that will impact our we think it's going to impact our road resurfacing program. That information is, so we're watching very carefully the Office of Budget and Management at the state level in terms of how they're impacted, because to the extent that there's a downturn in their revenues, and there will be, whether it's the gas tax or whether it's the income tax, that will impact us. But yeah, I think we can work towards providing you milestones updates probably monthly. My recommendation is that the Finance Committee at the end of this meeting establish monthly meetings, and then maybe perhaps as part of those we would be able to give you that whatever those milestones are, whether it's 30, 60, 90, or whatever makes sense. Justin, did you have anything to add to that request by Councilman Hellinger?
Sure. Thanks, Tom. So for the April financial report, it'll definitely reflect revenue declines. The issue with the gas tax is we probably won't see those declines for another 2 months because there's a delay in which the state gets the money and then distributes it to counties and municipalities. The income tax decline we will likely see starting in April, but it might worsen over time. So we can at least give initial data right away after month-end close is done for April. And then we'll probably have some more firm ideas as to what to do in modifying the budget going into May.
And do we know what, if we were to look at our income tax new streams, those buckets, I know in the past we've had some analysis done saying, we know who our major employers are and where a lot of those revenue funds are coming from. Do we have anything that breaks down that income tax revenue by industry sector? Because obviously, this is the big impact from this sector-wise is going to be the hospitality sector, the food, drink, lodging, all that. Do we have any idea how big each one of those buckets are for, let's say, our automotive, durable goods bucket, our hospitality bucket?
We can do that by individually labeling the employers and what their withholdings are. But the bad thing about these tax accounting softwares on income tax, they're not good at capturing demographic data. So like, for instance, when Honda announced the furloughs last week, I sent some estimated monthly declines to administration as to what that loss would be, at least for 1 month. We can start looking at this for our major employers, but we just have to do it manually, unfortunately.
Yeah, I didn't know if we had any way to identify that income tax by industry sector, but okay.
We can also do a sampling of some of the restaurants here in town, and I can give that to you as an estimate. The other issue operationally is most of the income tax staff are working from home. I obviously can gather all the data, but if I need help from some of the staff, it might kind of get this reporting to you, but I can definitely start working on that for the April report.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
Kent, Chris?
Well, I definitely think the monthly meeting idea is a good idea because just like George said at close of council, there's just too many unpredictables here. There's too many things we don't know. It's too hard to predict. So I think by meeting monthly, we can monitor these changes and start to think about what adjustments we want to make and try to stay ahead of it as much as we can.
I think it's going to have to be we'll have to go by month basis. It's just too difficult to really look long term on this thing.
The other thing I wanted to add is, as we over the next couple of months, we'll be starting our budget planning process for 2021 for the operating budget, and then for the CIP budget, which will be 2021 through 2025. That will be, that again will be impacted by this. So we'll be taking a look. We're already looking at what our current capital project obligations are this year, what projects are funded by dedicated revenue streams, and what projects, equipment are funded through the general fund. And to the extent that we can postpone or delay some of the capital improvements that are funded by the general fund, we'll be looking at that. But for instance, the Glen Road project that we awarded a week ago, that project is funded separately from the general fund, so that can move ahead. But to the extent that we're using general fund dollars to perhaps purchase a $200,000 piece of equipment that we might be able to delay, we'll be looking at doing that as well. So, but we'll continue to involve Finance Committee and City Council in those discussions.
Excellent. You have anything else there on that 0.6, Tom?
No, just really just again, and I know everybody is just we just don't have a lot of answers right now. And I listened to Mayor Ginther's. He did a town hall discussion today at noon. It was on there. It was a YouTube channel, and it was pretty interesting, just in terms of being the mayor, the largest city, and kind of their impacts. And some of the economists he's talking to are talking about a more rapid recovery. I'm not seeing that could happen, but I think rapid in this case could be taking us through 21 and 22. I've seen some projections that say it's over the next several years. So that's really the most frustrating part of this, obviously, is from a financial standpoint, is trying to project what that future might look like. But we'll be continuing to monitor it and involve City Council and the Finance Committee in these decisions.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Tom?
No, that's it for me.
Okay.
Don't
So
we
let's
want
move
to
on
step
down
in
into
at
member
8?
comments. Ken?
Are we going to go ahead and establish dates for the next meetings?
Yeah, we had that after. That was number 8 on our agenda.
Okay. Well, other than that, that's all the comments I have.
Okay.
I have nothing.
Okay. Yes, we're a committee of few words, which is a good thing
For now.
for now. So yeah, if we want to do this on monthly, what dates is going to work for you guys? Is there a day of the week that works better for anyone?
Councilman, if it could be mid-month, that way there's enough time for us to get month-end close done and then get the report completed.
Would that be like end of the second or the beginning of the third week of the month, or since you can't really?
Yeah, if it could be somewhere around like the 15th,
Okay.
that would probably work best. Sometime like for May, that falls on a Friday. My goal is to have the monthly financial report done by like the 5th day of the month.
Okay.
And that way it gives everyone time to read the report.
Chairman Hellinger, would it make a difference?
Third Wednesday.
I'm sorry. Would it make a difference that we only have one meeting in May scheduled for council if there was something that needed to go forward?
Well, that's definitely a consideration, I guess.
What was that, Elaine?
My concern was if you had a meeting in the middle of May, we only have one council meeting scheduled at this time for May because Memorial Day. So if you were looking at taking any action on a council level, that might push it back. Just something to consider.
My thinking would be that we'll probably won't be at that point
Stage.
where we'll need any kind of formal action.
Okay.
City Council, I think that's going to be later on in the year.
Mr. Chairman, I have a suggestion. Why don't we pick the second or third Wednesday and then go ahead and set that up for the next few months?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I concur. Is there a day that works better for you, Ken, or you, Chris?
No, I can make anything work.
Oh, yeah, doesn't matter.
Does this time work?
Yeah.
Can we do it?
For me.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Why don't we do it like the second Wednesday of the month. Will that give you enough time, Justin?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks.
That would be the 13th, May 13th.
Yeah, May 13th, and if
Go
we
ahead and
just,
set up several months.
yeah, it'd be June 10th and July 8th.
Mhm. August 12th, so on.
Yep.
Works for me.
Okay.
At 1 p.m. We want to plan at 1 p.m.
Yes, please.
Okay.
George, I did want to share just, I've had some conversations with some of the commercial builders about the current state of the construction industry. It seems to be at this point, they're holding steady. And we'll continue to monitor that. I plan to call the builders that do a lot of work in the city, Pulte, Ryan Homes, Romanelli and Hughes and others, just to kind of get a sense of what they're seeing, what they're hearing. I think they expect some sort of a slowdown. Again, it's back to the question of what the extent of that. And so anyway, so that's just wanted to make you aware of that.
Excellent. Thank you. Anyone else have any comments? Anything to throw in the pot and stir around a little bit?
Yes, sir.
I've got the rest of council here, a lot of council. Carolyn, I wanted to ask you, I know we talked about perhaps meeting having the second meeting in April. And there are some planning cases that I've talked to Lance Schultz about that would actually help getting approved if we could at that April meeting possibly. So I don't know if I can follow up with you offline about that, but
Yeah, I'd prefer that.
okay.
All right. Anything else? Anyone have anything? No? All right. Well, then we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 1:40. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, George.
Stay healthy, everybody.
Thank you.
Everybody.